What's up, everybody? It's your girl who is, in fact, Dead Aspie, and I'm back in the City of Lights that doesn't sleep in New York City. So I just got back from Orlando, like, the day before Election Day, and I'm happy to be back in the city, because I love being in New York City. But I, really needed that time away, and that space, I guess, that I can relax a little bit. There's a few reasons why I went to Orlando. One of them was because my partner is there, and he's there for a combination of financial and personal stuff with like his mom. Which, by the way, in case you need to know, they're both fine. Everything's good. But yeah, he's still over there right now, and he'll be back in town either by the end of this month or the beginning of next year, just working through some stuff, and that's fine. And both of us, we're fine. We're together. We're happy. And yeah. Besides not seeing my partner for most of the summer, I also went to Orlando because I just really, really, really needed a vacation from everything. I mean, obviously not YouTube, because I still uploaded stuff and whatevers, and it doesn't take up like a giant portion of my life at the moment, because I haven't done any massively big projects with it yet. I plan to, especially once I move, potentially at the end of February, but that's another story. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But from practically every other aspect of my life, I just really, really needed a break, particularly from like working. I just needed some time to shut that part of my brain off and do things and relax and whatever. One of the reasons why I really needed the vacation was, as you may or may not have seen in previous videos, while I had tons of fun working at the Renaissance Fair this summer, it was very taxing, emotionally and professionally and mentally, because of a lot of unnecessary and very avoidable stress. I really spent this season doing my best to make every fucking thing that was thrown at me work. And I got recognized for it, which is nice, and I appreciate it. But I just hate that I had to go through that. It was ridiculous. And I appreciate, like, the people that have been very supportive of me throughout this season, that have been there for me and listened to me. And it's one of the reasons why I love being at this fair, is because of the people there that I have come to be, have trusting relationships with, like interpersonal relationships. Some of these interpersonal relationships, like, I've gained at least a couple of new close friends that I can trust and I can talk to about really anything. And it feels really good, especially knowing that I have their backs, they have my back, and that's something I don't get to experience very often, and haven't experienced very often in my life. So I'm very thankful for that, which is oddly appropriate in this season of Thanksgiving in America. And the stress of everything that had been happening at fair really started to interfere with my non-acting work life. Like, my brain was basically over there when it should have been at my other job, and it was really starting to interfere with that and my personal life. So that was really a sign that I needed a break from everything, or almost everything in this case. And I basically was going through some burnout. At least I think that's what it was. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with it. And I needed to fix that. And I have dealt with burnout before. It's actually one of the things that made me realize that I really needed to go to somewhere to help fix some mental shit. Because that, like, years ago, led me on this, kind of transformation, I guess, over the past, I want to say 3 years or so? I don't know. But I'm glad I did it before, and it's been very helpful. And I'm still working on stuff, but yeah, I'm getting better at knowing when I'm burning out, and I'm learning how to take care of myself and advocate for myself, and all that fun stuff. And I'm glad that I was able to recognize that in me. That this trip was something I really needed, and I did it. So I don't have any regrets about it. It was also useful to use that time to edit my makeup videos, and that was a really good test run, I think, of all of that. Like, I knew I wanted to do some of it for Halloween and all that, and having the time to do it, it's a little tricky at the moment, but this was basically a test run, I guess, if anything, of how to go about this, like how to film it, how to edit it, how to organize information of all of that, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time doing that. I'm very happy with how it all came out. I learned a lot of things. Some of the struggles I had was because of space issues in my computer, but I figured out where that was coming from and I fixed it, so hopefully it'll make this process a lot easier next time and for any editing of my videos. Another thing I realize is that I'm getting soundproofing in the new place that I'm gonna move to after living here, because if I'm gonna live near an airport, these planes flying over is going to piss me the fuck off. Like, every time I have to stop recording for that, I sometimes end up losing my train of thought, and I hate it. But, yeah, while I was in Orlando, I even had, like, a great time doing things with my partner. We went to Halloween Horror Nights. We saw The Shining on the big screen in the movie theater. That was an experience. If you ever get to see The Shining on a movie screen, I highly recommend it. It's awesome. And a few other things too. We basically, I just loved that I got to spend time with him, and it was really good to see his mom again. She's a very nice lady, by the way, and he's really cool. But oddly enough, when we saw The Shining, we had this very interesting conversation, because I guess he was talking about this with a friend, but here's an interesting thing about The Shining. If you don't know what this is, it's a movie made by Stanley Kubrick, and it was adapted from Stephen King's The Shining, which actually is not like the movie too much. It's actually, Stephen King does not like this movie because it does not really match the story that he wrote, but that's another conversation. We were talking about how Jack Nicholson, who was Jack Torrance, he gets a lot of the credit for this movie because of his work in there. It's good work, don't get me wrong. He does this very well. But we talked more in depth about Shelley Duvall's role, who was Wendy Torrance, how she approached it, partly because of how Stanley Kubrick treated her during the shooting process, which was entirely fucked up, by the way, and not something I condone at all. And the relationship between Wendy and Jack in The Shining. It's something that I never really realized fully, I guess, until we had this conversation. Essentially, there's this scene in the very beginning of The Shining when the kid, I guess, has his first episode of The Shining, if you want to call it that, like whatever the visions are and stuff. And he's being checked out by the doctor, and the doctor's asking questions to Mom while Jack's away looking at this hotel and all that. And she mentioned something about an incident where Jack was drunk and accidentally dislocated the kid's shoulder. Because he threw the office papers or something all over and he was mad at him or whatever. And since then, he hadn't drank alcohol and I guess that's an incident that she apparently doesn't really let him live down, or so he says, or it's something that you don't really forget. And I remember when I was watching that in the movie theater, that line or that little bit that she did, that to me, red flags went off in my head, because that's like, oh, wait a minute, that's technically child abuse. Oh no. And the way she was talking about it too, like, she was saying it like she had maybe witnessed some of that stuff on herself and all that, and things like that. So that suggested, it implied, that Jack and Wendy had a bit of an abusive relationship. I mean, some of this work also came from the fact that Stanley Kubrick, like, treated Shelley Duvall like total shit throughout this entire process. He was really, like, fucking with her. Like, changing lines at the last minute, giving her wrong versions of the script in order to change it, to throw her off or whatever, neglecting her, telling all the crew to, like, don't pay attention to her, basically treating her like an abuser would treat their victim. The words that my boyfriend used to describe it was method directing, which I think is the best description of it I could possibly, or anyone could, I know, might be able to think of. I don't know if there's a better word for it. Like method acting, but with directing. And yeah, it's something I never really thought about or realized whenever I've seen The Shining. And it sort of, I don't know, it also, like, relates to how not a lot of people really like Wendy as a character. And that may have been intentional in the storytelling. Like, you're not supposed to like her or something, but you want to. Like, I think intentionally they were trying to make the audience feel that she was a pain in the ass in the way that Jack sees her. And that's kind of messed up. And I think that's how victims of abuse are sometimes seen, is like, because they try to speak up and people gaslight them into thinking like, oh, they're just being a pain in the ass or anything like that. And I, in my own ways, relate to her. I mean, I haven't gone through the exact situations that she has. I'm not a mother. I don't have a kid. I'm not married. And I don't have an abusive relationship. Like, I can say that with confidence. My relationship with my partner is not abusive at all. And I'm very happy that I can say that. But as somebody who has been through a lot of bullying as a kid, I can understand that. Like, I can understand being silenced because you're not taken seriously, or you try to defend yourself and it doesn't go well, or someone knows that you're having problems but don't really do anything to help. Maybe they have, like, some advice or whatever, but they don't take any action about it. Like, nothing gets done about the situation, and you're kind of left to fend for yourself. Or maybe in Shelley's case, this is what especially resonated with me. That feeling of constantly walking on eggshells so that you're not doing something that will set off or upset the person that is abusing you or controlling you or whatever. And you're constantly editing yourself. You're so hyper aware of what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're saying it and all this other shit, just to avoid confrontation with the person that's abusing you or bullying you or whatever. Like, you're trying to make yourself as invisible as possible, or as numb as possible to be able to deal with that shit. And if you really pay attention to what Wendy does in The Shining, she definitely has made herself, like, smaller, and is very careful about what she does and what she says. And even if you look at, like, Jack's job as the hotel keeper, he barely does any of the work that actually goes with it. Wendy does it. But he's the one that got the job. So, that's like, I don't know how else to describe it, but that walking on eggshells thing, I can relate to that very heavily, like, personally. And it sucks. Not just because of, like, bullying or anything like that, but one of the problems that you run into as a person on the autism spectrum, and this I can say from total personal experience, I realized that I'm someone who is very aware of, like, how much I edit myself, I guess. Maybe that's not the right way to describe it, but I know that I do pay attention as best I can to how I say things, or when I say things, or what tone am I using. Is it an appropriate time? And I sort of envy anybody who doesn't have to think about that as hard as I might have to. Because things like that in nonverbal communication come so easily to people who don't struggle with that sort of thing. Like, who don't have autism. Like, all this stuff seems to come very naturally to them. Like, they might think about it a little bit, or whatever, I don't know. But I have to think about this almost constantly in a conversation. Or am I even part of the conversation? Like, am I included in the conversation? And is anyone even going to pay attention to me when I say something? Or am I changing the topic at an inappropriate time? Do I have to change the subject? And these are things that don't come as easily to me and other people who are also on this spectrum. And it's very tiring. It's very socially exhausting after a while. And when you pile on a abusive situation, be it bullying, domestic, or whatever, that's even more exhausting. It really takes a toll on you. And it's something that really sucks. And one thing from, I guess, like, slightly psychoanalyzing this movie with my partner and other bits of conversation we had is I realized that when you're someone, I guess people do this normally anyway, there's a lot of social masks that you put on when you're around certain groups of people. And people can, I guess without autism, can do this, like, pretty seamlessly. Or maybe they do this entirely intentionally, depending on the situation, or depending on what they want, or whatever. And they do it to get ahead, or, you know, they want to make friends, or famous, or whatever. And maybe they can relate to what I'm feeling too. But I feel like this is especially true with anybody who's on the autism spectrum. I could be wrong, but I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. Because of how much I feel a need to edit myself, censor myself, or, like, I have to constantly pay attention to how I'm responding, and whatever I, like, or I'm scared of, like, giving off the wrong impression about something or being misunderstood, I put on a lot of masks, or I have in my lifetime. I've been, you know, constantly changing it up depending on what I need at the time and what situation I'm in or whatever. And I feel like I've done this so much, mostly to appease other people or avoid confrontation, or because of that walking on eggshells feeling. I've done this so much that I don't really know who I am underneath all that. Like, I don't know myself. I don't know who I am. And by extension, neither does anyone else. And that includes my partner. Like, it's really difficult to know the real me. The best way I can describe it is like, you know when, if you're looking in a mirror, and you see your reflection, but you have no idea who's looking back at you? Like, you don't recognize that person? You're not sure who they are, they just feel like a total stranger to you? That's what I'm feeling. And it sucks. A lot. I really have no idea about, I guess, anything about myself, like, on a personal level. I can tell you that, I'm an actor. I'm a special effects makeup artist. I'm a tournament chess player. I enjoy watching YouTube videos. I like this show. I like these kinds of movies, or whatever. But I don't know personality aspects of myself. Like, I've never really been good at describing myself as a person. And that might be because I've just had to hide so much about myself that I just forgot who I am. And it sucks when you're somebody that wants to be honest and genuine. Not just with, like, you guys. And I want to be honest and genuine with you guys. I look up to people on YouTube that are that way, like Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, the Game Grumps. Like, the reason why I like them so much is because their hearts are into this, and they're passionate, and they're honest with their viewers. They don't sugarcoat shit. And I respect that so much, and I want to be somebody that can contribute to that. Like, in any field. But it's really hard to be honest and genuine when you really have no idea who the fuck you even are. And I spent so much time in my life hating myself. But was it really warranted? Or, like, these things that I thought about myself, like, are they true? Or are they not true? And hell, I spent the majority of my life not even knowing that I was on the autism spectrum. So, like, learning that before transitioning to a new school and state and everything, like, just starting my adult life with this information, it kind of made me feel like my life is a fucking lie. And it still does sometimes. Like, I feel like my life is a lie. And it sucks. And I would not wish this feeling on anybody. I really wouldn't. And that, especially in the last week that I was there, like the second half of the trip, that went through my head. And it was something I didn't realize about myself until then. It was a good thing to, like, I guess process that or discover this about myself, but it threw me into a bit of a dark pit. And thankfully, my partner was extremely supportive of me through this. And I'm so fortunate to have him in my life. And yeah, like, that was something, I guess, that had been buried in my brain somewhere for, like, a really long time. I guess it's, like, been seething underneath there. And it just needed to come out. And that was the thing that helped me realize that, or whatever. And yeah, it still crosses my mind, but I'm able to handle it a little bit better. And I know that these feelings, like, it'll pass. I'm aware of this. That's the case with anything like that. It'll pass if you work through it and do your best to understand it. Because if you just let it sit there, it's not going to do you any good. And that's where, like, therapy and things like that can come into play. Talking to your friends, talking to your family, talking to your therapist, or whatever. Whatever is a supportive system for you. That's, like, where it can be useful. And I'm finding that very useful. I've spent the past 8 years that I've lived in New York City doing a lot of growing. And believe me, if you met 18-year-old me, 18-year-old me would not be here talking in this camera and releasing this to your faces. Like, that's nothing that she would have dreamed of. But here I am, 26-year-old me, saying all of this to you. And if that's any indication of how much I've grown, then that's that. If it's not, then I don't know what is. So, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And if you moved on to other things that are more interesting and entertaining, I get it. It's fine. I will have entertaining stuff in the future, I promise. Some of the things that I'm waiting to do is for after I move to a better space. Because I don't really have the space here to do some of the things that I would love to do. And I don't have the money and I don't have the technology for it yet. But hopefully by early next year I'll be able to do it. So, fingers crossed. And now that I've gotten all of that off my chest, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you like this, my name is Laura, and I am Dad Aspie. If you didn't like this, I'm Shane Dawson. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.